Hello everyone. Next year I will publish another book, The 25 Universal Laws, which I wrote many years ago and left unfinished. But this year I am inspired to finish this book. In this video I will read to you the first chapter, the sneak preview of my new book. There are so many universal laws, but we're going to go step by step. Chapter 1, the Law of Oneness, the quiet thread that connects every life. If you have ever stood alone beneath a wide open sky, perhaps at dawn when the light is soft and the world is still, you might have felt something subtle yet unmistakable, a presence bigger than yourself. It might come as a sense of peace, a quiet whisper, or a soft warmth in your chest. You may not have had the words for it at the time, yet the feeling is familiar to every soul. That feeling is the first doorway into the law of oneness. Before any spiritual teaching, before any universal principle or philosophy, there is this single truth: everything is connected. Everything belongs to everything else. Nothing exists in isolation. And the more deeply you understand this, the more gently and wisely you begin to walk through your life. The law of oneness is not a rule of the universe unforced. It is the nature of reality itself. It is the way things are beneath all illusion. To understand this, let me begin with a story. The story of two lambs. There was once a man named Long who lived in a small village. He was known for two things: his kindness and his quiet nature. He owned a humble workshop where he crafted oil lamps. The lamps, though simple, were treasured for their warm glow that made every home feel like a sanctuary. One evening, a great storm swept through the village. Trees bent under the pressure of the wind, roofs trembled, and the rain poured relentless force. When the storm passed, the village was left in the darkness, every lamp extinguished, every home shadowed. Seeing this, Mr. Long lit the two lamps he had kept burning in his workshop. One he held in his hand, and one he placed by the window so that its light could be seen from the street. As he stepped outside, something unexpected happened. Children ran to him first, drawn to the soft glow of the lamp. Behind them came their parents, weary from the night, but comforted by the sight of that long, steady flame. As each family gathered, Mr. Long noticed something remarkable. Because his one lamp was lit, others began relighting their own lamps from it. One flame became two, then 5, 10. Soon the entire village was glowing again. Later, when the village elders thanked Mr. Long, he smiled and shook his head gently. "I lit only one lamp," he said, "but the flame did not belong to me. Light is meant to be shared. When one lamp shines, the whole village can find its way." The truth in his words was simple yet profound. That one person does affects everyone. That one person gives becomes multiplied. The light of one heart becomes the light of many. This is the essence of the law of oneness. Just as a single flame can illuminate countless lamps without diminishing itself, every human life is part of that large illumination and interconnected tapestry where each thread strengthens the other. The invisible thread. If you were to look closely at your life, its joys, its sorrows, its turning points, you would notice something astonishing. Nothing in your story is completely separate. A chance encounter leads to a friendship. A stranger's kindness lifts you on a happy day. A painful event softens your heart in ways you later come to bless. A word spoken years ago shapes your destiny. There is an invisible thread that ties you to the people you've never met and moments you have never anticipated. You may call it God's guidance, destiny, synchronicity, or divine weaving, but regardless of the name, the truth remains. You are part of everything, and everything is part of you. This idea is not new. Scripture whispers it gently. Quote, "For in him we live and move and have our being." End quote. Acts 17 verse 28. And again, quote, "We, though many, are one body in Christ and individually members of one another." End quote. Romans 12 verse 5. In God there is no separation, only expression. We are different branches, but we are all part of the same vine. Different waves, but the same ocean. Different lamps, the same flame. How separation sneaks into our lives, yet most of us do not live from this truth. We often live as though we are alone, as though our lives are isolated islands. We divide ourselves from others through judgments, misunderstandings, fears, insecurities, and past wounds. We become so used to our individual struggles that we forget the deeper union underlying all things. This illusion of separation is subtle. It appears in ordinary moments. When you think someone's pain is not your concern. When you assume your actions affect no one but you. When you judge someone for choices you don't understand. When you close your heart to protect yourself, when you believe you are small or insignificant. But separation is the lie. Oneness is the truth. To see this clearly, consider another simple moment, a story of a stranger. A stranger in the grocery line. A stranger was standing in the long grocery line, frustrated and exhausted. A woman ahead of her seemed distracted, counting and recounting her money, whispering numbers under her breath. People behind sighed loudly. The cashier grew impatient. Finally, the woman said softly, "I'm sorry, I thought I had enough." Her total was short by only few dollars. A stranger had every reason to remain silent. She was tired, she wanted to go home, and she did not know this woman at all. But something in her stirred an intuition, a nudge, a whisper from a place that was not her ego. She pulled out a $5 bill and handed it to the cashier. The woman looked at her with tears gathering in her eyes. "You don't know what this meant to me," she said. The stranger smiled and said something simple. "It's just a small kindness." But later that night, as she lay in bed, she found herself thinking about the woman. Something in her felt lighter. It wasn't the money. $5 meant little to her. It was something else, a sense of rightness, a sense that she had stepped into the flow of love that connects all beings. What she didn't know was that woman she helped had been struggling silently. That small act lifted her heart enough to carry her through the week. It reminded her that she wasn't invisible, wasn't forgotten, wasn't alone. When the stranger acted, she didn't just help someone. She allied herself with one truth of oneness. Every act of compassion strengthens the entire fabric of humanity. Every small kindness echoes across lives you never see. The law of oneness is not about grand gestures. It's about gentle awareness of your life touches on others. What science and spirit both reveal If you were to study the universe through science, you would find evidence of oneness everywhere. Every cell in your body contains particles once part of a star. Every breath you take contains molecules breathed by an ancient trees. Your heartbeat is influenced by the emotions of those around you. Human brains synchronize naturally when people share stories. Emotions are contagious. Energy spreads through groups instantly. But long before science documented this, scripture already hinted at the connectedness of all things. Jesus spoke often in unity, not as an idea but a spiritual foundation. Quote, I pray that they may be all in one, just as you and I are one. End quote. John 17 verse 21. In God's creation, there is no isolation. There is only one relationship. Heaven itself is described not as loneliness but as communion, and earth reflects the same pattern. When you heal, others heal. One of the most remarkable aspects of the law of oneness is this. Your healing heals more than just you. Have you ever noticed that when you forgive someone, your entire home feels lighter? When you work through your pain, your children begin to breathe more easily. When you grow in wisdom, everyone around you benefits. A friend once told me that when she began addressing her unhealed wounds, those she had carried from childhood, her daughter began sleeping better. Her son stopped having anxiety attacks. Her husband softened, become more patient. It is like a whole house healed with me, she said. It's not imagination. It is oneness in motion. The energy you carry affects people you love and those you barely know. When you heal fear, you create safety. When you heal anger, you create peace. When you heal self-hatred, you create permission for others into your life to love themselves. And this is why the Bible repeatedly teaches, quote, above all, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. End quote. Proverbs 4 verse 23. Everything you do, everything you say, everything you touch, your inner world is not private. It ripples into the world around you. Oneness in everyday life. You might wonder, how do I live this law? How do I practice oneness in my daily life? The answer is gentle. Living in oneness does not require great effort. It requires awareness. It is felt in small, quiet choices. When you listen without interrupting, when you offer patience instead of irritation, when you pray for someone who hurt you, when you choose understanding over judgment, when you soften your voice during conflict, when you ask, what pain might they be carrying? When you let someone merge in traffic without anger, when you notice the beauty in another soul. These small choices are not trivial. They are spiritual acts that keep the world stitched together with love. Your presence becomes medicine. Your gentleness becomes healing. Your compassion becomes a blessing you may never see in your eyes, but the angels see it, heaven sees it, and the universe expands because of it. The gentle mirror. One of the hidden aspects of the law of oneness is that everyone you meet serves as a mirror to something inside you, not in literal sense, it in the simplistic you attract everything sense. But in the deeper, more compassionate way, people reflect your fears, desires, insecurities, strengths, unresolved wounds, unspoken truths, hidden gifts. When someone irritates you, they often reflect a part of yourself that still needs healing. When someone inspires you, they awaken a part of you that wants to grow. When someone hurts you, they point to the boundary that needs strengthening. When someone loves you, they reveal the good that already lives within you. Jesus spoke of this in a gentle way. Quote, "Why do you notice the speck in your brother's eyes but overlook the plank in your own?" End quote. Matthew 7 verse 3. This was not a condemnation, it was an invitation. Invitation to self-awareness, invitation to compassion, an invitation to understanding that we are connected so deeply that others reveal us to ourselves. A word that heals through you. Once you begin seeing the world through the law of oneness, life becomes softer. Conflicts lose their power. Moments of anger transform into moments of insight. You begin to understand why people behave as they do, and you respond less from ego and more from wisdom. You walk differently, you speak differently, you listen differently. You realize that your life is a channel through which God's love travels into the world. There was a time I described a moment when I felt this truth profoundly. I had been caring for my elderly mother, a task that had become exhausting physically and emotionally. One night, as I helped my mother prepare for her bed, a wave of frustration washed over me. I felt alone, overwhelmed. As I tucked in the blankets, my mother touched my hand and whispered, "You are not just taking care of me, God is taking care of me through you." I thought I understood instantly. My hands were God's hand, my patience was God's patience, my love was God's love. It is the law of oneness in its most tender form. God moves through us to reach each other. We are not separate channels. We are one unified system of love. Living with open eyes, when you begin to embody the law of oneness, life becomes a sacred experience. You notice small details, the way sunlight falls across the kitchen table, the sound of a child's laughter, a kindness of a stranger's eyes, and a quiet strength of an elderly man walking slowly with his cane. Everything becomes connected. Everything becomes meaningful. Everything becomes holy. For God is present in every moment, not just in a grand miracles, but in a smallest gestures, in the soft smile of a neighbor, in the patience of a teacher, in the courage of a single mother, in the forgiveness of a wounded heart, and in the humility of someone who chooses love over pride. You realize that the divine is not somewhere distant, it is here, now, in you, in others, in the spaces between us, and in the breath that flows through all life, in the heart. And this is the heart of the law of oneness. You are part of the whole. As you move forward into the next chapters of this book, remember this foundational truth. You are not a separate soul struggling through life. You are a living expression of the universe itself. When you breathe, the world breathes with you. When you love, heaven rejoices. When you forgive, chains break in places you cannot see. When you grow, the world grows softer. When you shine, others remember their own light. You are one thread in divine tapestry, unique, irreplaceable, infinitely valuable, yet always connected to the threads beside you. You belong. You matter. You are part of the whole, and the whole is part of you. In this truth, your life becomes guided, your choices become clearer, your heart becomes lighter, your spirit becomes peaceful, and the world around you begins to transform, not because of its change, but because you finally see it as it truly is, one. That's the end of chapter 1. Thank you so much and look forward to hear chapter 2, The Law of Vibration.